Thank you. Good evening, everyone. I'd like to welcome you all to this regularly scheduled Planning Commission meeting for Tuesday, May 13th, 2025. I'd like to open the meeting at 7:30. May we please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. May I have roll call, please?
Mr. Carpenter?
Here.
Mr. Fitzer? Mr. Hara?
Here.
Mr. Cusero?
Here.
Mr. Nushaw? Ms. Redmond?
Here.
Mr. Scott?
Here.
Mr. Solomon? And Mr. Tinley?
Here.
Thank you.
Thank you. Number 4 is approval of the agenda, and I think Nick has something to change in our agenda.
Yes, this morning, the applicants for 35 Florence requested to postpone their site plan review. So if the Planning Commission would like to, they can make a motion to amend the agenda to have that removed. They may come back with modifications or the exact same site plan. We're not sure what the rationale was. They just requested to postpone it. So if you may to meet their request to remove it from the agenda tonight, that'd be great.
Can I get a motion to approve it with change?
I move to remove agenda item number 8, the review of the Florence site plan from the agenda for tonight.
Second.
Motion support. May I have roll call, please?
Mr. Hara?
Yes.
Mr. Cusero?
Yes.
Mr. Dushai?
Yes.
Ms. Redmond?
Yes.
Mr. Scott?
Yes.
Mr. Tinlin?
Yes.
And Mr. Carpenter?
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next, agenda item number 5 is approval of the regular meeting minutes from April 22nd, 2025. That'd be our last meeting.
I will make a motion to approve the meeting minutes from, April 22nd, 2025.
Second.
Anybody have any changes? And they saw the, everybody's happy with it? Can I have roll call on that, please?
Just one comment, Mr. Chairman. So next year, are we going to talk about the CIP at all, or should it not be on the agenda? It was just reviewed in the minutes as the city manager came and reviewed it. We filed it. I'm not objecting to any of that. I'm just, if we should make a minutes adjustment to it to just say that it doesn't apply to us, I don't think we reviewed it, is the only thing.
Any impressions on that?
Do you want to amend it to?
I just don't think it was presented. Like, it's been
Right.
presented to us before.
Correct.
I don't think that was a presentation. That was an explanation why it wasn't being presented.
Well, I think,
It says move to receive and file.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm fine with it as it is. I just wanted to get the other commissioners' thoughts on it.
I think the way the word presented is being used is the document is being shared and presented to the body, not a presentation.
Okay.
I think that's the intent of the wording in the minutes for that case.
No objection then. Fine.
Okay, motion support. Can I have roll call, please?
Mr. Cusero?
Yes.
Mr. Nushaw?
Yes.
Ms. Redmond?
Yes.
Mr. Scott?
Yes.
Mr. Tinlin?
Yes.
Mr. Carpenter?
Yes.
And Mr. Hara?
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. Agenda item number 6 is public discussion. Is there anyone from the public wishing to opine? We'll give you a couple of minutes if you would like to say anything. Seeing none, I will then close public discussion. And we'll move on to agenda item number 7, which is consideration of the site plan for 41 through 45 South Main Street.
Hello, everyone.
Evening.
For the benefit of anybody who might be watching at home, Joe Tangari, Giffords Webster, I'm the city planner. So this is 41 to 45 South Main Street. You may remember it as Clausen Grill and Clausen Jewelers. That was 5 or 6 years ago now that it last had an active use in it. Clausen Jewelers has moved up the road and Clausen Grill closed. So this building's been empty for a while. This applicant is proposing very minimal changes to the building to accommodate 2 new businesses. There's going to be a restaurant and a coffee shop. Both of those are permitted uses in the city center district. We're noting that The site is, that's about 5,500, 5,600 square feet in total. It's a very small site, which of course is mostly occupied by the buildings. It's surrounded by city center zoning, which is all occupied by commercial uses or public parking. They're proposing to renovate the interior and update the facade a little bit, they're really not making that many changes. They also are adding some outdoor seating. You may recall that when Clausen Grill was still operating, there was a big outdoor seating area there. They're essentially looking at the same footprint. That is subject to administrative review and approval. DPW in particular takes a pretty close look at that when they come in for that. As the changes focus on the facade, the review does as well. So they're meeting, the building actually meets the dimensional requirements of the ordinance. It actually has the right rear setback from the alley there. As far as building envelope elements are concerned, the building actually does meet those standards. The one thing we're noting is that rooftop equipment screens will be required for all visible rooftop equipment. So that is something that will need to be added because in the past, this building has not had screens around its rooftop equipment. There is nearby bicycle parking. They exceed the required transparency of the ordinance, which is just window coverage between 2 and 8 feet. There's no adjacent residential, so there's not a screening requirement. They are proposing some planters in their outdoor dining fences and like kind of planter things that aren't part of the fence. That will be reviewed in a little more detail when their outdoor dining area is actually approved and authorized. Building materials aren't changing, but they do comply with the ordinance. They are going to have to apply for signage separately. They have shown kind of what they're looking for on the facade plan there. They're not proposing additional lighting. They are proposing to remove a couple of light fixtures that used to shine on the projecting sign that used to be there. But they're not going to have a projecting sign, so they don't need those lights anymore. They're going to come down. They are also looking at replacing the awnings that are currently on the building. I just think they're not in particularly good shape, but they're pretty much going to be the same style of awning that's already there. They've sat there for 5 years without being used, so they could probably need to be replaced at this point. We look at pedestrian circulation. That's all, pretty basic. They're going to need to leave a 5-foot clear area around the outdoor dining, which is true of every outdoor dining area in downtown. Parking is provided all in the adjacent public lots and on-street spaces. The site can't accommodate a parking lot. When the previous businesses were open, you did occasionally see employees parking behind the building because there's a little space back there for like 2 cars at the most. But there's not really a great way to actually mark that for like public parking. And then, we are reusing an existing building that's already served by public facilities and services. So we had one item in bold in the letter, and otherwise we just found it to be meeting the ordinance. So if you have any questions or comments, I'm happy to entertain
Looking
them.
at the drawing here, it calls it a sectional overhead door.
Yes.
Is that going to be a big, wide garage roll-up door in the
Yeah,
front?
one of those roll-up doors that allows you to kind of open up the space when the weather's nice.
Just one of those?
Yes, just one is shown on the
The
plan.
other doors, it's an opening doors and there's sealed windows.
Yeah, and actually the door doesn't even go all the way to the ground. It's kind of just in the space that's currently window. They're just replacing the windows that are there with that roll-up door.
Okay. Any questions for Joe?
So it's been a long time since this building's been in use. I can't remember, was it a fire that?
There was a fire that damaged the roof.
Okay.
Yeah.
Has like engineers evaluated the building?
The building inspector has been in there, and I don't know if all the repairs have been done or if the applicant is planning on doing, finishing the repairs, but yes, there will be subject to inspection, definitely.
I assumed it would be because when she purchased, she started out with one, and then she purchased what used to be the bakery on one
Yes.
side and the jewelry on the other side, and then opened it all up. And I just heard that it wasn't done correctly, that it wasn't, probably a steel beam should have been put in or something like that. I'm not sure. I figure that's up to engineering to take care of that.
Yeah, that's building and engineering. We'll be looking at that.
Any further?
Joe, just the awning. So I've seen awnings that really beautified cities, and I've seen other awnings that I kind of wince at when I drive by. Is there a firm commitment to do an awning, or could it be that the awning isn't done at all?
I'll let them answer that if they're, I mean, I don't know exactly what their attitude as far as the awning is concerned, but they're marking it as to be replaced on the plan.
Okay.
Anything further for Joe? How about the applicant? Would they like to come to the microphone and perhaps answer some questions?
I'm Tim Fote, the architect that's been working with the people that also own Biscuits and Gravy. And they bought the buildings and build a bar and coffee shop. Part of the interior work that we are doing is to open up the bar space with new framing, putting in a beam that goes across, so it's a much more open space. As far as a coffee shop, we're upgrading it with new toilet rooms, things that it didn't have prior as far as a business. It's a cute little sink, but it doesn't comply with ADA or any of those requirements. So we are upgrading that with a new interior, as well as cleaning up the exterior. As far as the awnings, yes, we will be replacing them. For outdoor seating, I mean, certain times of the day, shade is much better than having the sun beating down on you directly. As far as rooftop screening, yes, that will be done as part of the project.
The place is moving in, it's a coffee shop and a restaurant?
Yes, they're two, it's
two-
two separate businesses.
Okay.
But it's one owner, and we wanted to present that one way, but they will be applied for the building permit process as two separate establishments.
Okay. So it'll be what type of restaurant? Any idea yet?
It's a bar restaurant.
A restaurant?
Yeah,
Okay.
pretty much what was there, so.
Okay.
I'm just saying now's your time to talk about rooftop screening.
I'll take that up with administration.
Oh, okay.
I think they're all aware of what the problem is with that. Any questions?
Is there any specification on like the grease containment, garbage?
There, as far as an existing restaurant, there would have to be a grease trap that's there, and we would go through the process to size it's basically generated from the 3-compartment sink to that size of that grease trap, so we have to verify that that is a proper size, but it has to be there already. So.
Apologies, I meant like the actual grease recycling receptacle.
Yeah, that's part of our new
Yeah.
kitchen equipment.
On the exterior, I'm saying?
That can be, I've done it two ways. I've done them on the exterior, and I've also done them on the interior where that's possible.
I think there's a little one out in the parking lot there.
We had one in the parking
Looks
lot.
There very well could
Looks like
be.
a little mini dumpster, but it's strictly for cooking oils and things.
Yeah, yes, yeah, should that be, I mean,
Is it gonna be, are you wondering about
is it
placement
gonna be
and
like
stuff?
placement, exposure, like where's?
It would be-
Usually they're presented on the site plans.
Yeah, it's probably, I can tell you it's not there, but it'd probably be, there's a cooler and the back wall intersection, there's a little space right there for it.
Okay.
Yeah, it's not gonna be sticking out from the building that far, so.
And then just directly related to waste itself, there's a public dumpster back there that all the businesses in the area use, which is picked up by Tringali, who services all the dumpsters in downtown.
Gotcha.
Any further questions?
So, back to the awning, would the sign or would the name of the business be on the awning or just
No,
above it?
it's just above it.
Just
I mean,
blank.
as I stated earlier, if you're sitting outside, and enjoying a meal, you don't want to be on an 80-degree day. The shade does a lot for us, so.
You want to pick the color for them?
I was just wondering what the color was. Yeah, so it's a black brick, right?
Yeah, it's a black brick, which we'll be painting. It'll still retain that color, and then we'll still be doing the black frames for the glazing and also the sectional overhead door, so that's.
When do you plan on starting work, and when do you plan on opening possibly?
They're pushing me to be done.
Yeah, yesterday?
Well, if it gets approved, we're looking at a couple weeks to submit our plans. We've
Okay.
been going through that with our consultants, and that's what we're looking at.
Okay, thank you. Nothing else? I'll entertain a motion then.
Okay, I will make a motion to approve the site plan for 41 through 45 South Main, sorry, I don't think my mic's on. South Main with the following conditions, rooftop screening and sign being compliant with our zoning ordinance.
Second.
Motion, second. Anybody want to add anything or subtract anything? We're all good with it? All good. Can I have roll call, please?
Mr. Nushai?
Yes.
Ms. Redmond?
Yes.
Mr. Scott?
Yes.
Mr. Tinlin?
Yes.
Mr. Carpenter?
Yes.
Mr. Hara?
Yes.
Mr. Kucera?
Yes.
Thank you.
Welcome to Clausen again. And we'll move on to agenda item number 9, which is discussion of the ground floor parking.
So really what I did on this is I updated the illustration that we had before, where we were looking at the current requirements, and I kind of adjusted things to give people a sense of what the realistic construction basis would look like. So we've got 12-foot ground floors with 10-foot upper floors now, and what that gives you is enough space to get your stuff in between the floors and still have 8-foot ceilings on the upper floors, and then your commercial ground floor / parking ground floor is lower than the 15 feet that's required now, or would be required in the event that you didn't have parking on the ground floor. And that still also gives you enough space to get all your stuff up in the ceiling. And then we're not specifying it as a ceiling height anymore, it's floor-to-floor height. So the floor of one floor to the floor of the next floor is the distance you're looking at there.
Why would we
Kind of
why
figure
would
out.
we do that?
Well, it's really just to allow them to figure out how to split up that space. If they only need, if they're using equipment that only takes 1.5 feet of space between
they don't need
floors,
3 foot
between
between
floor
the
and
floors,
ceiling, then they can have a higher ceiling. And if they really need the 2 feet, then they'll have a somewhat lower ceiling. But really, we're kind of leaving the ceiling height up to the market and the actual construction, vagaries of construction. No one's going to do a ceiling height that's, first of all, it doesn't comply with the building code, but second, that isn't going to give them a product that they can market. So the floor-to-floor ceiling height just kind of gives you the space you're working with rather than actually trying to place a ceiling on it. I also think it helps with the commercial space because a lot of people don't even like to put a ceiling in their commercial space. They just have the rafters and the equipment up there and it's exposed and painted.
Yeah.
So, and what this does also too is it doesn't expand the height of the buildings at all from what we currently allow. You're getting an extra floor in there, but we're not actually making the buildings taller than we currently allow them to be. So I guess I'm interested in your comments on that, and then from there, I want to talk a little bit about the larger site and kind of how we want to handle other aspects of the site, so that I can then draft some language and put it in front of you and see how you feel.
Well, on that, I think that's great, Joe, and I think it's great that we don't actually have to go taller
Sure.
and add a story to it, so I really appreciate all the work that you did and broke that down. I honestly feel like it's very helpful, and I'm on board with it. I don't know if, are you thinking that certain, because you have the chart here with the maneuvering and, excuse me, the parking pattern? Are we thinking that there's specific parking patterns that would go to certain zones? Or are we thinking that we can let the applicant choose which one fits with their,
I think we're
Site.
probably looking at allowing the construction and the shape of the site to drive that. So they'll come up with a building, and they may find that on their site, let's say it's a somewhat shallow site, you may just put parking under the building in the back, and you have one row of parking there.
Like
kinda
a port
under
kind
the
of?
building.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly, like and it's kind of tuck under parking, and then the rest is out in a lot. You may find that there's a site where it works better to actually have a building on kind of a parking podium, and there's 2 bays of parking inside of it. And those might be diagonal, they might be 90-degree. It's kind of whatever works. You might have one-way circulation through in order to save space. And I think we kind of want to avoid being prescriptive on that and just sort of let them figure it out. And it's going to be inside anyway. And then as far as, what goes outside, then we need to tell them what they're working with outside the building too. If we're looking for some sort of larger buffer or something, because we have more windows or something like that, that's kind of our next thing to tackle. Is what does the rest of this site look like? Is there some other thing that we're trying to get out of this? More green space on the site is the main thing I've been thinking about.
yeah, and I agree and appreciate that too. The only thing I would say about the bays, or, what you were just explaining is, I don't know if this happens, but most people would treat that like a garage, to where there'd be like garbage cans out. I don't know if that's something we should think about and consider, or if it's gonna be so narrow that you're just have room for a car, or if we should put something in there about possibly it turning into bikes and garbage cans and things like that that are then occupying those drivable spaces.
I do appreciate what you're saying, and I think that one way we can deal with that is by having collective trash accommodations on the site. If you've got this arrangement, a dumpster enclosure is required. You have to have a dumpster enclosure. That way you're not going to have the bins in the individual bays.
Yeah.
And I mean, a bike, I guess, people might put their bikes in there. But if you've got a bike parking facility somewhere, hopefully they would use that
Yeah.
too. So I guess providing alternatives for people. And then, I think that we probably could say something about, we're not using these as outdoor storage areas or something like that. And then that gets written into all the lease contracts that there's a provision in the ordinance that says you can't put a shelf here with all your sports equipment on it or
Right.
whatever.
Yeah, okay.
How would, if there was a situation where it was a parking like tuck under, how do you calculate the lot, how do you calculate lot coverage with that? Would the footprint of the overhead building be calculated in the lot
I
coverage?
think you would consider that to be the lot coverage, yeah. It would be the portion of the site that is covered by the building.
Okay.
Even if the building isn't 100% touching the ground there, you would consider that to be kind of the building footprint.
Have any builders approached the city seeking this type of a change, or are we just doing it on our own here to be friendly?
I think we're basically trying to be proactive in figuring out ways that we can make the sites that we have that are very constrained work a little better. Because, one of the things that we were finding is that we're not really getting much in the way of green space on these sites because there's just not a lot of room for it when you've got all that parking sitting there in a lot. If we can move some of that parking into the building without hurting the viability of the project, we're taking up hopefully less of the lot itself. And now we've got to write in something that ensures that we get something
But
some
no builders
additional
approached
space
us
out of it.
requesting this.
We've had it talked about a couple times, yeah. We don't have an application or anything, but we have talked about like, well, could I just put the parking on the ground floor and then have that extra, story to put above it? Because, it does cost a lot to build the.
I like it as long as we maintain, like you said, maintain the overall height of the building. It's not gonna get higher just because you're putting cars underneath it.
Right, exactly. That's why I was really trying to maintain the current height limits without actually adding to them. Because we don't gain in bulk, we just gain in versatility and flexibility and the ability to add a little bit more green
As
space
an
to
option,
the
they could,
lot.
have the drive 1 foot lower than the building, so that gives them additional height.
Yeah, I mean, they
your car
certainly
go-
could
Drop
do
down a
that.
foot easily in and out, if they're worried with the height restrictions.
Yeah, they could definitely excavate down a little bit if they felt that they needed to.
Yeah, I like it.
So Joe, I know we're not talking about, but wasn't the one on our plans for today, one that would use this ordinance?
Well, not so much because they weren't adding an additional story.
Okay,
But they were lowering the height of the ground floor and they were putting parking inside the building.
so right now, parking is allowed inside?
Yeah,
it-
you can do that as
Oh,
as part of the
okay.
garage. There's not really anything preventing you from doing it. There's just no reason to do it at the moment because you're kind of putting in a bunch of expense without getting anything out of it. You're just taking away your chance to break even on the project because you're eliminating stuff that you would be building otherwise.
So if said project were to come back after we have something in place, then they wouldn't have to ask for a variance on certain things, right? Like on
Exactly,
on this-
yeah.
Okay,
Walk me through that again. So I understood what Joe said is essentially they could do it today. They could have those spaces under roof, essentially on the first floor, next to a commercial on the side, for example. Nothing prevents them from doing it today.
Sure.
If they do it, they get more parking spaces on the books for those 2 or 3 spots in the case of Florence. But what physically would we be changing here?
Well, what we're doing is, right now, they've got to cut into usable space to put parking under the building. And they don't get it back anywhere. What this does is, without raising the height that we're allowing, it allows them to get that usable space
I
back.
gotcha.
by
The height
putting
of the
something
first floor
above.
basically can be lower,
Yeah,
which gives them
exactly.
more flexibility on the upper floor. I got it.
Exactly, so they
Okay.
can get what they were originally trying to build, they just aren't occupying as much of the space outside the building on the lot with parking. So we can get hopefully more buffer space and green space.
Do you know buildings that are doing this in other cities? Maybe
Sure,
one that
yeah.
we could benchmark?
Royal Oak has a couple of them, kind of clustered near the downtown, and then Ferndale does as well. That newer apartment building on the edge of downtown Ferndale, which is quite a bit larger in scale than anything we're going to be permitting, but nevertheless, it does have parking on the ground level. The one at the northwest corner of Main and 11 Mile also has the parking underneath. It doesn't have a commercial liner, but it does have parking
I
underneath.
think the Elevate apartments too are fairly low.
Yes,
So
yeah.
that might be another one. And they're building a second one, I think, up off of Maple.
I think they are, yeah.
Yeah.
And then it's actually pretty common on the West Coast to have that tuck under parking where you've got a portion of the back building that's sort of carved out so you can put your car kind of under the building. And out there, they don't typically put a garage door over it. Here you might just because of the winters. But nevertheless, it's a pretty common model in other parts of the country.
Okay.
It has been for quite a while.
Then changing subject to the open space. So you talk about a green roof. So I've seen a few green roofs where they put a fake artificial grass up there, and there's a little stairwell that goes up there, and you can be on the roof or something. Are we talking about the same thing?
Technically not a green roof. It actually has to be planted with living material to qualify as a green roof.
Okay.
And what that does is it provides stormwater absorption and holding. So a green roof will actually retain stormwater and release it at a predictable rate. Whereas any other kind of roof, like an AstroTurf or something like that, is just going to sheet it off, just like a
Any other
typical
roof.
tar roof.
Joe,
So
is that
that's what a
something-
green roof does.
Is that something we currently just allow?
Yeah, anybody could do a green roof. We've never had anyone do a green roof. They've gotten a lot easier to do over the last 10 years or so, I would say. They used to be an incredibly complex, expensive thing to put on top of a building just because there's a lot of weight that comes along with a green roof. There's structural considerations that you have to take in to go through to put a green roof up there successfully. But they've managed to make them a lot lighter. There's actually a really interesting demo one in Innovation Hills Park up in Rochester Hills. I don't know if you've been there. It's at Hamlin and Adams, just north of M59. And it's like a little pavilion. There's a big playground and there's a pavilion, and it's got a green roof, and there's plants that are particularly water absorbent and things in it. And they actually have a little section of it down where you can kind of actually touch it and like really look at it in detail. So it's not just on the roof. They gave you kind of like a demo. So if you're ever interested, you can go up there. Another great example of a green roof is the Ford roof plan. Has a huge green roof over a very large portion of one of its facilities. If you take the Rouge plant tour, you get a really good view of it when you're first going into the tour of the factory, when you go from the area with the dancing robots, and then you go into the factory, you can see over the whole green roof. It's pretty neat. There's a really good one over a dumpster enclosure in St. Joe as well, on the other side of the state. Those are ones that I can think of offhand that you can easily see when you're in the area.
I don't want to get lost on green roofs because I know that's not what we were going to talk, but I would love to explore it more. And I would, in the future, if someone's asking for a trade-off between water retention on a green roof versus like an underground or a typical pond of some sort, retention, detention, I think it would be helpful for us to maybe learn a little bit more about green roofs and how much that retention is, and maybe we can talk about green roofs in the future a little, just so that we're more familiar and comfortable with them.
Yeah, actually, I do think that having a kind of like a retention capability ratio or something that we could refer to, where it's like you get this many square feet of green roof equals this many cubic yards of underground storage detention or something like that. I think that could be a really useful thing to know.
Yeah, I think it would be helpful, because my question would be, well, does it take the water down the downspouts? I mean, so again, I don't want to get lost.
Ultimately, yeah,
Okay.
just like any other retention system, it will outlet to your storm sewer system.
Gotcha.
It's just a matter of how quickly it outlets. Whereas if you have a tar roof, it just all goes, and it goes into the drain as fast as it's going to go across the surfaces. This is a slow release. The whole point of any retention system is that downpour, it holds on to a lot of it, so you don't have backups in the sewer
But
system.
it would be different than like a pond, where a pond might flood, but that one's still gonna drop the water, and it's not going into the ground system. It's gonna end up as water coming in, going onto land around it. So I feel like to compare them as the same thing maybe doesn't do it justice.
It's gonna
but
have
something-
to be designed so that it's not gonna like dump water onto to a neighboring property.
Yeah.
That's gonna be a requirement anywhere in Michigan. So typically what you do is you pitch it toward the back, and then you have a barrier that keeps it from going to the sides. And then the pitch to the rear is sort of what sends it in the right direction. The Florence plan that we would have looked at tonight, if they hadn't postponed or asked for a postponement, sent it to a yard that had a bioswale in it. So there was additional filtration and retention
Gotcha.
back there before it actually made it into the system.
Oh, okay.
And then the city can also come up with a list of plants that are allowable and that plants that we don't like we do with trees.
Yeah, well, there are plants that are ideal for
Some
rain
would soak up
gardens.
more water, I
and
would assume,
yeah,
and not be invasive or cause
yeah,
problems like that.
plants that do a lot of filtering with their roots are generally what
And-
you're looking for.
Who's responsible for the engineering component of that? I've seen, I think there was a train station or something where it didn't go so well with the green room for, like,
Yeah.
obviously, that's not something that's in our purview. But is that
Right.
something EW does, like,
Yeah, they'd be capable of reviewing that.
they do it?
yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, if we go back to ground floor parking here, I'm pleased with what I'm seeing here. My one concern though is, we've already put apartments on 14 on Main Street, and I think we're kind of running out of space now to put apartments. And if an apartment goes in on Main Street or 14, it's supposed to be 15-foot ceiling with retail on the ground floor. And we've been giving somewhat of a variance on that. How do we feel about, let's say we take the Pizza Hut site, and we put apartments there, and they put ground floor parking right there. To me, that's going to be somewhat of an eyesore to have a parking garage right at our main intersection.
They'll still need to have the liner use along Main Street and 14 Mile.
So they wouldn't be allowed to do,
Yeah, so they wouldn't be allowed to just put the parking on the ground floor and nothing else. They would have to have the liner use. So what they'd be able to do is you get the liner use, which has to be a minimum depth of 20 feet. A whole 20-foot strip or more, if they needed it, would be dedicated to some sort of active use.
Right.
And then behind that, they could put some of their parking under the building.
okay, I've seen that in other cities, but to me, it's be like an eyesore to be driving at the
Yeah, well,
intersection and seeing a
the,
parking lot
the
right there.
northeast corner of 11 Mile and Main Street is, that I just referred to
Yeah,
is a good
yeah, I've
example.
seen
There
that
is no liner use, it's just the parking.
Yeah.
That's not really what we want. We want the
Not-
liner
not
use
in
with the
retail
parking
area.
behind
No, you
it.
don't want to do
Yeah,
that.
so, because, no one has a reason to walk along that portion of 11 Mile on Main Street. We want people to still have that reason to walk. So that liner use kind of becomes your protection against that.
And I was gonna, if I can piggyback off that, so in city center, you said 20 feet. Is there something that says that it has, that commercial space needs to be facing the main streets?
Well, yes, it does have to have, it has to meet all of those frontage standards that we have in the
Yeah.
city center district. So it's gonna have to have an entrance, it's gonna have to have a minimum amount of fenestration, window coverage between 2 and 8 feet above grade. So yes, it's going to be a storefront, one way or another, even if it's, one of the things that can be used as those active uses is like a lobby or the fitness space of living units or something like that. Even that is gonna have to look like a storefront.
So, but that is only, it's 20 feet, I thought it was a percentage in city center, maybe I'm getting it wrong.
It's the full frontage of the building.
Okay.
Yeah.
But in CMD, which I noticed it was referenced a couple of
Mm-hmm.
times, the CMD, is that we're thinking of these being applicable to city center and CMD, right?
Correct.
And CMD doesn't have a liner
It does.
component. Oh,
Yeah.
what is it the same?
It's the same liner use requirement, yeah.
Okay. And they have to have a store frontage?
They do have to have the active use along the front of the building, yeah, on the ground floor.
So, okay, and I hate to keep talking about the site plan that we were gonna see, but that one didn't have, what do you mean by it had
That
to
one's
use?
not on Main Street and 14 Mile.
Okay, but
It's
there
one
are,
of the few lots in those districts that isn't, and if you're not on a major thoroughfare, you don't have to have the liner use.
well, cause CMD does, there's a lot not on a major thoroughfare in CMD.
There is some, there's a bit of it, near the fire station just southeast of where we were talking about. There's some on Florence, and it wraps around to Bowers a little bit, like the Eagles, building would be
I
CMD.
thought there was more than that.
Trying to remember what else there is offhand.
There's some down Church.
Oh, yeah, Church and Renshaw, yeah, there are some
Yeah.
along Church and Renshaw. So if we wanted to make sure that we were being covered, we could put in some sort of requirement that the parking isn't the thing that you see on
Yeah.
those secondary streets.
I think that'd be helpful. I mean, obviously, it doesn't have to be a commercial space, but a living space or some type of, maybe how we have the glass, the transparency kind of thing in city center where a certain
Sure.
percentage has to, have a window or something. I think that would be useful to consider in CMD. At least
Okay,
that's my
yeah.
opinion, I don't know.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Just going back to the roof thing, so to confirm, there's nothing preventing a developer from putting an AstroTurf space on the top of the roof currently, or there is?
No, they could do that if they wanted to.
Would it count as, I guess, open space for us?
No, I wouldn't count that as open space. It's still an impervious surface that
Yeah.
is gonna do the same thing with stormwater that a regular old roof would do. So yeah, I wouldn't consider that to be open space. It could be active space or social space, which has its own value. But yeah, I definitely wouldn't consider it to be an open space.
Yeah. The concern that I have is, some of these apartments are going to be pretty major developments with a lot of units, and they don't have a lot of green space. Like the one on Roth has a very small little green space,
got a
so
little
if you have a
park in the
pet,
back,
and I
yeah.
think a lot of these places will host pets, maybe that small space would accommodate the pet to be a pet. And, but other ones may be so dense and have so much parking lot, there's just nowhere for them to go, except to the neighborhood on Lincoln or Bowers or something like that, which could be a little bit, perhaps as a nuisance to them. So, the developers are kind of in a hard spot where would they provide such a facility for owners with pets? And if the roof isn't prohibitive, like if they're allowed to do that currently, I think that's great. I didn't know that, so.
But I don't know if you take pets up there though,
Wouldn't take my
right?
dog up on the roof to,
And even a green roof, is that a thing? I mean, I don't know, it sounds crazy, but like, can pets go to the restroom up there and
You
do
could
have
do that, I
access?
suppose.
I think it's a
mean,
thing.
Is it a thing?
I think it's a
I
thing.
think you'd really want to make sure people are cleaning up after them, but
Definitely that, yeah.
But
Don't
yeah, I
clog
mean, you
gutters.
could do that, certainly. You could
I
have a
know,
little
I've seen
space
it in
up
Las
there.
Vegas. I had a niece that was living on, I think, like the 12th or 13th floor with a puppy, and she would have to get it in the elevator, take it down all the time, and they had an assigned area in the back of the building for dogs.
Yep.
You can clean up after yourself.
Oh, yeah, we're talking roofs, so,
Yeah.
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 Yeah, you certainly could do it. You could even put one of the little, waste bins
I
up
could.
there, have the little bags that you pull off, and
That's interesting.
you could do it. There's no reason you couldn't.
It would be bad if it was into a downspout and directly into like a sidewalk with a restaurant at the bottom, So I was just probing what the technology of our ordinances is currently, so thanks for explaining it.
Sure.
Sorry, I was bringing us back to the parking.
Yeah.
So are we suggesting a minimum then of 50%? Or could you have a building that's 75% building and 25% parking?
50% was what I was thinking, is that if you're doing this, if you're getting this extra floor within the height, you've got to really be using the ground floor of the building to move some of your parking under the building to give us that additional space on the lot. That's really what we're trying to do, trying to shift the parking so that it's not all taking up the entire rest of the lot, and we're actually giving ourselves some space for that, for a little sitting area, for the dog to, do what a dog does, and,
So,
just give us more green and more trees and things.
so just to clarify that, so you're saying there's a minimum, if you were to elect to go with that route, you'd have to do a minimum of 50% parking under the building?
No, a minimum of 50% of the
Max.
footprint of the building would have to be devoted to your parking facility. So you can't just say, well, I've got 3 parking spaces under the building out of my required 33, and give me the extra story. You actually have to be using a substantial portion of the ground floor
50%
to
of the
accommodate
footprint.
the parking.
Yeah.
And then you get your bonus, and you're also gonna be pulling enough parking under the building, under those circumstances, to give us some more space on the lot. That's the idea.
But nothing forces them to use that extra space in the lot for something other than parking.
Well, that's where we have to come in, and we have to say, this is the minimum
Yeah.
open space that we're gonna accept.
What happens if there's an actual dimensional hardship between the back of the building and the back of the property or the parking area where 4 or 5 feet, let's call it, or 25% was needed to meet that requirement of like a parking situation where there's parking in the, opposing each other? Does that make sense?
Okay,
I mean,
sure.
Would that be allowed, or?
Well, there could be a legitimate case for a variance in terms of how much space is devoted to something. We have a pretty wide requirement for maneuvering lanes. We have a 24-foot required maneuvering lane. Like, most communities only have 20. Like, we're requiring a lot more maneuvering space between banks of parking than most communities.
So let's say if you needed that, in order to meet the requirement, you needed 4 feet,
Sure.
right? I mean, why not give them that 4 feet that they need and allow them the, 90% of building space? Why not give them what they want, what they need? If
I would
it's-
assume they'll seek a variance for that.
Well, they can go to 90%, right, as long as they have the liner used.
Yeah, they can
Oh,
go
okay,
to
so
90.
I
That was just
misunderstood,
the
I
minimum.
misunderstood that.
Oh, yeah, they
Minimum, not max.
absolutely could go
Okay.
further than 50%. Yeah, if they want to use 75% of the
Oh, I thought it was
building.
either they have to use 50% or
Yeah.
it's off the table.
Yeah, if
Okay,
they, if,
I'm
At
sorry.
least 50%.
yeah, if they want to use 75%, 80%, yeah, absolutely, go for it.
They can't go 100 though, right?
Yeah, because you got to have the liner, yeah. And, well, you're going to have the stairways and
But
things
there's
like
no
that, too.
25% or,
Right, exactly. We're
He
not,
just doesn't want to give up the ground floor.
Right.
yeah.
Yeah. And we'll talk about the green space stuff in the second part of this ordinance. Like, this isn't the whole ordinance that we're
No,
looking
I
at.
haven't given you any language yet. So what
Yeah.
I think what I'll do now is I'll actually draft this up and I'll actually give you language that you can review and say, all right, yes, this works for us, or let's tweak it in this way and that way. And then I'll try to write up an open space requirement that I think gives us what we want. And we'll see how we all feel about it.
Okay, good. You got all you needed from us?
Yeah, unless anybody had any other comments.
Thanks, Joe.
Okay, then we'll move on to discussion of the B3 zoning district standards, permitted uses.
Yes, permitted in special land uses in the B3 district. This really came about because, I say administration, but it's Nick. Nick received the calls. We've received some inquiries about some long vacant spaces that have B3 zoning. One's on Maple Road and one's on Rochester Road. The one on Rochester Road specifically shares a building with CVS. There's like a space behind the CVS that's always empty. There's also a building up right near Main and Maple that it has been empty for a long time. And we've had a bunch of people ask us about medical is kind of, a lot of people are interested in doing medical there, but it's not permitted in the B3 district. So we were kind of talking one day and we were like, well, why isn't medical office permitted in the B3 district? It's the general business district. It sort of seems like medical office ought to be permitted there. And then we started thinking a little bit more about it and thinking, well, there's a few things that people have asked us about and we've had to tell them no, that would have filled these spaces that aren't listed in B3, and we couldn't think of a good reason why. So if you go to the end of this memo here, well, the end of the memo is the zoning map, so before the zoning map, where it says discussion, we've added a little list of uses that aren't listed in B3 that people have been asking us about for these spaces that seem to have a lot of trouble filling up. And we were just thinking, well, wouldn't it just make sense to add these as permitted uses to the B3 district so that people can do them and we can fill these spaces? They're pretty basic uses, meeting and banquet spaces, indoor fitness and recreation uses. Recreation uses are listed as a special land use in B3 right now, but if they're indoors, we couldn't really figure out why they had to be a special land use. Because if you look at all the other special land uses in B3, other than smoking establishments, which has specific reasons for being a special land use, everything else is like an outdoor use. It's something that's like a car wash or a gas station or something where there's going to be some externality. But the indoor recreation and fitness uses, they're indoors.
I would love to see indoor rec go into our industrial area as well, because there's a lot of, we could have soccer there, there's
Sure.
a lot of indoor rec uses that could really go into those industrial areas. So I'm fully in support. I would just want to know, do we have a parking ordinance for banquets and stuff? Because I know that parking can get a little tricky, especially in our little itty bitty B3. Seems
Yeah.
like banquet might.
You've got pretty
Yeah.
small spaces, so you're not going to get like a huge venue. Let me see what this requirement is. Let's see. Let's see.
Joe, is there any way you could put the map up? Is that,
Oh, you mean like on the screen or something?
yeah, I'm sorry, it's hard for me to see on this one, just to,
I've looked at Nick and he seemed to understand what I was asking him to do, so we'll see.
I'm logging in right now.
thank you.
Okay.
There's like 3 of them,
Yeah,
right?
there's not that much. There's one along 14 Mile on the west side. There's one near Rochester and 14 Mile, and then there's one up by Maine and Maple. That's really the areas that we're talking about. Let's see if we've got. We have private service clubs, fraternal organizations, and lodge halls, which is a very similar use. So if we don't have a banquet center, I would say you lean on that one. Let's see, contractors carry out dance hall. Dance halls, banquet halls, meeting rooms, pool or billiard halls, arcades, parlors, and skating rinks have the same requirement, one for each 2 persons who may be legally admitted at one time based on the occupancy load established by local codes, plus 1 for each employee on the largest employment shift.
Does that seem fair to you on that ordinance?
Probably a little high, but it is, it's definitely going to give you what you need. I've seen banquet halls for one for every 3 people in other ordinances. I've also seen it as a per square footage basis, but that was tied to fire code. And I don't know offhand what the occupancy requirement for fire code. I think it's 75 square feet per person to come up with a maximum. And that's of usable space. But if you were going to go with a square footage standard, you'd want to tie it to what the fire code was going to say the maximum occupancy
Occupants would
of
be-
a space.
So you'd have to do parking for the maximum allotted people?
Yeah, exactly.
I feel like we could explore that a little bit more, don't you? Especially, like an outdoor fitness place, like I think of, there's a 5-star training, and really a lot of it, or even there's one on East Elmwood where they do fencing, and a lot of it is just parents dropping kids off, and I feel like if we're gonna consider indoor fitness and rec uses, I think that we, maybe in the future can look into that type of parking and what might be great there. Because I feel like we don't probably need a ton of parking on those lots. That fencing place doesn't have a ton of spots. It's Troy,
Sure.
but it's just, on the north side
Sure.
of Elmwood.
Yeah, there's like a private arts education facility that you could maybe break out as a land use, where it's the dance class, the karate class, the fencing, that kind of thing, where there's sort of a similar general use of the space inside. Or maybe we could look at and see what other communities are doing as far as requiring that for that.
I've been excited to bring that up as part of our master plan, getting rec spaces into our zoning a little bit more. But not to sidetrack everyone, but I would love to explore that more.
Sure.
I mean, in general, I think this list makes sense in B3. I looked up on the map where all the B3 locations are. I couldn't figure out why these wouldn't be allowed.
Sure. That was what we kind of looked at each other and we were like, you can't do a doctor's office here? Like, why? It didn't really make a lot of sense to us. So we thought, well, let's just take this to the planning commission and see what they think. So it sounds like we're okay with adding these uses to the district, and then you'd like us to look at a couple other things, which I can easily bring you information on the
And maybe
next time you
like
see this.
parking, because I don't know if we need to be overzealous on the parking for some of those uses. I think
Sure.
that might be why we want to break down certain uses a little bit more in detail, right? So that we can get more lenient on certain parking if it's right, like a Planet Fitness might take up more parking than something like the fencing place, but,
Sure.
so yeah, thanks, Joe.
Yeah, I can look at some other communities and see what they're doing in terms of their parking requirements for those uses. Rochester Hills strikes me as a community that definitely permits recreational uses in its industrial districts. Not within industrial parks. It actually has to have frontage on a major thoroughfare, but I could see what their parking requirement is for that. Farmington Hills does the same thing as well.
I think of Troy Gymnastic.
Yeah, Troy.
You know.
Yeah, Troy
Right,
Gymnastic,
Same thing.
yeah, I took my
I
kid
keep
there.
telling them, we
Yep.
need soccer, indoor soccer somewhere around here, so maybe we can zone for that.
So Joe, just for back to the topic of the B3, so what will be the next step for that? Just adding those components to the B3, or are you going to do it all together, industrial and the
We could
B3?
do, there's no reason we wouldn't be able to do it all together. I could just bring you the draft language and you could say, all right, go ahead. Wait, go ahead and say that in front of the microphone and then we can talk about it.
So I'll just kind of recap a little bit what Joe was talking about earlier. So we've had a few folks interested in these properties here, which, as Joe mentioned, have been vacant for a long time. And one thing we've been really trying to push is to get these long-term vacant spaces occupied with something, not anything, but something that fits the district. And in reviewing what some of these folks were looking at doing, we felt it fit the district, which is why we're presenting here. So some of these individuals are waiting to see how the planning commission reacted, which, based on the district, kind of felt it would be this positive sense of why is it not already there? You know, we want to move forward on it. And so with that, I agree. I think we need to explore the parking and some other districts in a little more detail. But I would like to see if the planning commission would be interested in setting a public hearing on these specific uses, just for some of the time restraints on these properties.
What's the next date?
So it would be June 10th, because there's a 15-day public notice period required. And so we can have the ability next meeting as well, so on May 27th, to kind of bring some actual language to you. But that way, we don't have to delay it another 2 weeks for a meeting, so we can get the public hearing scheduled on time. And barring anything major, can talk about it next meeting, have the public hearing on the 10th, and then hopefully everything's good, and can approve it and send it on to council.
Cool.
And we can, of course, then set a hearing on anything else.
Yes, and work on everything else in the meantime.
Okay.
That would be my recommendation.
Sure.
I mean,
I
they can
I'm fine.
go for a variance as well, or no?
Technically, yes, but then they're applying for another application that would technically not be needed, and, you know, try and save applicants money when we can. And we're pushing this not for one specific applicant or use, for multiple, because we've acknowledged that district is lacking, which is why we're presenting it not in
You
an
think this will be
applicant.
faster?
Yeah.
Yeah,
I-
the case for a use variance is extremely difficult to make if your use isn't permitted. in
Yeah,
that
I guess I see
district.
that, yeah.
A use variance is very tough to get.
Right, or a zoning ordinance amendment, there's different steps, and since we were already presenting it here, you know, the process has started at this point.
And we're talking a general use, not a special use, correct?
Permitted, yes.
So only other question I had was, where else do we prohibit medical?
Well, the
we-
single-family districts.
Okay.
That's the only one I know off the top of my head.
We got it
Westgate.
into the other B districts.
Yeah.
So B3 seems to be the one major omission as far as medical offices.
All the office ones cover it, I think.
Yeah.
Correct. BRD 1 and 2 allow it, O1 office service, and I believe B1 and B2 also.
Yeah.
So I think Westgate's and industrial are the only two commercial districts that don't, because it doesn't really fit those districts, as the B3 does.
So basically, just the B3 then would make sense. I think it makes a lot of sense. I mean, the Knights of Columbus is Office Space 1, right?
Correct.
It is
Yeah.
office one, yeah.
So it's not that far away that we would be doing it anyway. I think it's continuous there.
Right, well, in the case, one of the specific properties right now is 41 and 47 West Maple, which is the property kind of next to Tropical Smoothie.
Behind.
There's
Yeah.
one lot zoned O1 office service there,
And then the one
which
next to
allows
it
medical
isn't.
services, and then the next one's B3. And it's not uncommon to have neighboring properties
Sure.
have, but there's just one O1 office service there.
Yeah,
Yeah.
sounds good.
Yeah, did you want to explore industrial, some changes
Yeah.
to the industrial use?
Well, yeah, I think Joe's
Yeah,
gonna.
we can do that
we
as sort
don't
of an
have
add-on,
to.
but, once and we can work on that while this is working its way through the process. But yeah, absolutely, we can look
Yeah,
at that
that'd be
and
great.
make sure that we've got it covered.
Cool, so, I think I'm ready to make a motion, if everybody's.
Do we need a motion?
All right, let me know if I need to add anything. But I will make a motion to set a public hearing for June 10th to include indoor fitness, rec use, banquet, medical, and office to the B3 district uses.
That works for me.
Support.
Everybody happy with it? Can I have a roll call, please?
I'm here with.
And that was Ms. Redmond motion, Mr.
Second
Nushai
by-
second. Okay. Mr. Scott,
Yes.
Mr. Tinlin,
Yes.
Mr. Carpenter,
Yes.
Mr. Hara,
Yes.
Mr. Cusero,
Yes,
Mr. Nushai,
Yes.
Ms. Redmond.
Yes.
Thank you.
thank you. And then we move on to planners report.
That was essentially my planner's report. I did want to let the planning commission know that I will not be around in the second half of June. I'll leave you in Andy's capable hands. But I'll just miss one meeting. I'll be on vacation, so I won't see you in the second half of June.
Okay, and then we have staff report and training opportunities.
So the first and big update I have for you is the 63-day public hearing period for the master plan concludes this Friday, May 16th. So we have a public hearing notice out right now to have the public hearings on both the city master plan and downtown master plan during the May 27th meeting. We have not received any comments from any of the entities that were distributed the plan and the public hearing notice and the period. Tomorrow morning at 8:30, we have a meeting with Oakland County where they review the master plan. They do this for every municipality. We did receive an initial review memo from them that indicated they had no major issues with their plan and would recommend moving forward with it. So that's just a formality that the county does. So the public hearing will be on during the May 27th meeting, and if everyone's satisfied, there can be a motion to approve and recommend council approve it, and then they'll be able to take a look at that plan and move forward. The other item I wanted to mention is this Saturday, we've got two events in downtown. The first downtown farmers market in the southeast municipal parking lot is from 9 a.m. to 1 p.m. And the spring open air fair is also downtown on Saturday from 11 a.m. to 6 p.m. So make sure if you have some time, swing downtown and check out both of the events. And support our local businesses in downtown Clawson. From the report, City Council will have the first reading of the short-term rental ordinance during their meeting next Tuesday. Development-wise, due to the weather, there has not been a ton of movement with a majority of the projects, but the ones that are active have picked up speed again, and so you may be seeing some more activity on some of our recent approved site plans. Other than that, I don't have anything specific to note on, but I'm happy to answer any questions.
I've got one. Sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to ask, do you know when, I know there's some infrastructure updates that are going to be happening this year. Do you know when that will begin? I think Elmwood is up.
Yes, so we are working on some of the final preliminary construction specs with AEW right now, so we're anticipating going out for bid, as soon as those are done. I don't have an exact timeline. We have an engineering meeting tomorrow where we should have more of a fluid update, but that.
I was just curious. I
Elmwood
mean,
is
it's starting
planned to
get
be
warmer now, so
construction.
I'm thinking, that's
Yes.
going to be, that work's going to start beginning, I'm thinking.
So we have that project planned this year, as well as water main project on West Maple.
Okay.
Can you shed some light on what's going on at the old Pizza Hut? I noticed they just covered up the concrete with dirt.
Yeah, so
Environmental.
there was a ticket issued to the property owner due to the condition of the site, and so part of the conditions with the court was to have that seeded over with some type of grass material. Obviously, that work's not completed yet. They're still within their timeframe, and part of the condition was to have them bring in a site plan. I don't know the exact time frame, so we should be seeing a site plan for them relatively soon.
So it was approved to leave the concrete and cover that up with dirt?
Well, when the demo permit was approved previously, the slab was allowed to remain, which was not done properly.
So attorneys were involved, it sounds like.
So they're.
They're in the process of rectifying that.
Okay.
Yes.
All right.
To keep it short, yes. I can't dive into too much more, but I'm trying to give as much information without,
Just curious. I
Yeah.
saw them covering the concrete the other day, and
yes.
just curious how long that's gonna last.
The part of the conditions of the court order was to have a site plan submitted to the city and to see some progress on the development, so.
Is it required to blockade all the parking spots? I've gotten some feedback from adjacent businesses that were enjoying the use of that parking and can't now.
Yeah, so the city center district does not allow any parcel to be used just for parking outside of the public parking spots, so you can't have any type of private parking without a principal building on it in the city center.
Okay,
Unless they put it under a building.
gotcha.
Go ahead.
I didn't want to bring it up when the Biscuits and Gravy guys were here, but I was surprised that the big call-out is that the rooftop equipment screens will be required for all visible rooftop equipment. Is there any way at the building department, before they start work on their new building that they're buying, fixes the rooftop screening on the old building that they have? I mean, that just looks terrible, and it's been over a year now. When I asked you before, you said that they were going to work on their lot, they'll fix it then. Now they're not working on their lot. I mean, it's not going to take that much for them. That looks like aluminum siding that fell off a house. I mean, everybody's seen it, I think. It's just,
Yeah, I mean, the rooftop screen standards are relatively broad on what type of materials can be used. I can talk to the business owners and see if they can provide more of a sectional screening, because I know it's just on the one, that would be the south side
It's on both
of the
sides.
device.
both sides of the building have it.
Right, but the screen in itself doesn't screen from the front of Main Street. So we can talk to them and see if they can provide some.
I'm just surprised
some more
that
attention.
somebody here in the building department signed off on that. Because we, as planning, we said, hey, it's a mandatory thing, we want that stuff screened off. And somebody signed off, said, that's okay. I wouldn't put that on the side of my garage, I mean, and this is the heart of downtown, it's an eyesore.
Well, then we need stronger standards.
Yeah.
We've done it before, I mean, I've seen one in the past years ago, the guy put up plastic screening and it
But
wind blew it
but we
off.
can't enforce it if it's not in our ordinance.
We called him back in and we made sure that he drew us up plans and he made it out of steel and it.
Should we refine the actual standards of the rooftop screening, though?
We might have to,
It
yeah.
is supposed to match the building, so at least in color, it should be matching the building, or material, or it should match the building in some way.
Yeah, they got close to the color, but if you took it off, it looks like they got two bicycle racks up on the roof. You know, it's what the
Yeah.
framing looks
I
like.
think we need to like specify the actual coverage
Material.
ratio too, because it doesn't cover.
Because if
It's-
we approve their site plan for the new place now, and it says that we want it
Yeah,
screened.
I'm not gonna sit here and disagree
Enter
with you, but the standard isn't direct, right? Like for our fence ordinance, it's very clear of what the dimension requirements are, what materials. This has a little bit more broadness to it, and
So could that be a Joe to-do list before he goes on vacation?
And I think this kind of falls into the same conversation with the industrial district is, obviously, the heavy lift for the last 2 years was the master plan, so we'll now be working on trying to execute the goals and objectives from there. And I think maybe now, since, 2-3 years ago, a lot of you were newer, you've got some more site plans under your belt now, you're more comfortable with how the ordinance and all the processes work, that maybe we can also go through the zoning ordinance itself and identify some things that we have maybe questions on, want to clear up in some capacity. I think that would be one of those topics.
I get one more question. Are they still going to proceed with the planned traffic diet for the downtown district, or is that off the table now?
So the city did receive a grant from Oakland County Transportation to study doing a road diet on North Main Street from 14 Mile north to about Roth Phillips area. And so that'll be going in front of city council next Tuesday to approve the agreement and also allocate the match that was required for that grant. And so I just want to make it clear that this step in the process of the North Main Road Diet is just the public engagement, the exploration of how it would go. So there may be a pilot program associated with it, but we're not going to start changing the flow of traffic, snap of a finger. So this is the first step in the process.
I think there was some confusion when we were fixing the crosswalk over there by Renshaw's, right, where they have the down to one lane. So
Yes,
it's
well,
it's way off, in other
Yes.
words, right?
Yeah, and this is directly for North Main.
Yep.
And that crosswalk was being fixed after some back and forth with the road commission. That was hit multiple times, actually, so we're fixing that crosswalk, so hopefully we're good there now.
All right, sorry, Nick, we're putting you to work tonight.
I'm here, I missed last meeting, so you guys
We're making up for
gotta
it.
catch up.
Is there a specific traffic plan for the Shalom site? Like, I've noticed a lot of traffic down Elmwood. I'm assuming that is the main, is there a way residents can source where that traffic is, supposed to go? Like, because I don't think they go to Main Street, but it seems a lot of semis, big ones with concrete and dirt go
So
that
we
way.
don't have one yet, but
Okay.
it's certainly something we're gonna have to do, especially the fact that Elmwood will be under construction later this year, likely when they're starting to do some site work. The engineering plans were received this week under their second revision. And so once AEW is satisfied with their engineering plan, it'll come back to the planning commission. And so we're still a little bit farther out until we'll see a lot of activity there. Obviously, it comes back to you and city council. But it's a conversation we've had, but haven't had in depth and nailed anything down.
Have they purchased the property yet?
No, not yet.
Not yet.
No.
Okay. Anything further for?
Thanks.
Two questions for me. First of all, going back to the circulation of the master plan, so it was very interesting to me that Royal Oak, their master plan, I guess, came to us, but we didn't really formally review it, but we shared ours with Royal Oak. Is that so?
Mm-hmm.
And did they offer any receipt, or did they signal any?
No.
Not at all. So we sent it, maybe they reviewed it, maybe they didn't, but there's nothing in the process that said that.
That's
they-
correct. Yeah, we have not received any formal comments, or
Okay.
informal for that matter.
Understood. And the TCO for Culvers, it's expiring soon, but
Yes,
the permanent.
that'll be extended.
Okay.
So that date was selected with the hopeful anticipation that the warm weather would come a little bit sooner. And so we've had, obviously, it's getting better now, but there's been a significant amount of rain. The concrete company didn't start being able to supply them until later in the year than they expected. And so we set that date with the hope that everything would be done by then, but knowing that an extension would likely be made. And so we'll probably extend for 30 to 60 days, depending on where they are. I know that they said they're looking to get their line striped, so I know they're in the final stages, but they're not going to meet that deadline.
They are going to be closed on Monday for, I think they said Monday, for finishing the parking lot, they said?
Right, and they knew that going in, that when they did get a TC on the building and everything else was good on the site, that they'd have to probably close for a day or two, but that was worth it for them to open up when they did.
Okay. Thank you.
Anything further? Seeing none, then we'll move on to a legal update, but we don't have an attorney, so we don't have a legal update. And does anyone else have any comments to make before we adjourn? On anything? Everybody's happy? All good? I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
I will make a motion to adjourn.
Second?
And motion, support, roll call, please.
Mr. Tinlin,
Yes.
Mr. Carpenter,
Yes.
Mr. Hara,
Yes.
Mr. Cusero,
Yes.
Mr. Nushai,
Yes.
Ms. Redmond,
Yes.
and Mr. Scott.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.